Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. My name is Naseem Abdul Rahman. I'm Australian born, Australian origin with European parents. Alhamdulillah, I got married about 1 month after I became a Muslim. I'm married to a, mashallah, very, very good practicing Lebanese girl. Basically, it's a long beginning from the time when I had a Christian upbringing, basically, but not practicing. My parents would consider themselves Christian, but we used to go to church once a year for Christmas for about half an hour, and that's it. And then by the time I was about 10 years old, we never went at all. So I never really, I didn't consider myself to be a Christian, but as in for being a person from when I was what I consider a young age, probably about 14 or 15, I started to seek answers for things. I've always been a very, what I consider a spiritual person, seeking, always realising from about that time, 15, 16, that there is something more to this life, there is a point to this life. And subhanAllah, I used to read books on everything. I had a thirst for knowledge for when it came to religions and spirituality. I'd read books on, books on Hinduism, Buddhism, read the Bhagavad Gita, read all sorts of books, very seeking, and in all that time I'd never ever come across Islam. I'd never met a Muslim. The first time I had any contact with Islam was, there was a brother who I met, a friend of mine, who was a Muslim. He wasn't a practicing Muslim at the time. He was a Muslim by name. He was born a Muslim. He didn't fast, he didn't pray, he didn't do anything like that, but he still used to talk to people about Islam, I'm a Muslim and this and that. So that was the first time I'd had any contact with Islam. And from when I heard him talk about the few basic things, I started to want to look into it, and I started to want to learn about Islam. So it was a long period, over about probably a year. I started to look into Islam and started to read about Islam and, basically reading, and from the early outset, as soon as I started reading about it, my heart was attracted to Islam immensely. I was very wanting to become a Muslim and wanting to learn more about it, but there were so many misconceptions in my head about the religion that I had, which hadn't been clarified, because again, I didn't know any practicing Muslim. And then one time I went into a shop actually, and there was an Australian brother working in, same again, I didn't know he was a Muslim. These other brothers came in, he said Salaam Alaikum to them. I assumed he was a Muslim, so I said Salaam Alaikum back to him. And again, he asked me if I was a Muslim. I said no, and he said, well, you have to come to, there was a markaz, this is in Melbourne, because I'm from Perth originally, but I've been in Melbourne for the last 2 years now. And he invited me to come to this markaz and listen to a lecture, and same thing, I was afraid, I didn't want to go. I was like, no, I can't, I was Shaitan was holding me back, keeping me there. And then he didn't give me a chance. He said, brother, I'm going to come around and pick you up at 8 o'clock. He knew where I lived. He goes, I'm going to pick you up. I'm not going to give you a chance. I'll see you at 8 o'clock. And he came at 8 o'clock and knocked on my door. And so I couldn't really say no then. So went to this markaz, this little centre, and for the first time in my life met some practicing Muslims. Found out about the brotherhood that Muslims have, and basically prayed my first salah, Maghrib time. Basically, all my doubts left, I didn't have a hesitation, and I said my shahada and became a Muslim. I was never a bad person to anyone else before I became a Muslim, but I was a bad person to myself, because I'll be honest, like I said, I left school, I started going out, I started partying, I started taking drugs, I started doing all sorts of things, subhanAllah, living a haram lifestyle. Never harmed anyone else, but more harming myself, So my parents, once they saw me become a Muslim, they were happy and they were impressed, because of my life completely, as soon as I became a Muslim, a complete 180-degree turnaround, left my whole life completely, no hesitation with that. But so they saw how much of a better person I'd become. They're happy on that respect, but they've still got their severe misconceptions, they're severely brainwashed by what they see on the television, So anytime I start to talk about Islam, because they say something to me like, this is this and this happens, the Muslims do this here and the Muslims do that there, and when I try and clarify something to them, well, this is not the case, or, I'm sort of slightly giving them dawah, trying to, but not pushing it on them, but just talking about Islam. As soon as I talk about Islam, they go, nah, that's, it's good that you're a Muslim, but don't don't try and convert me. I don't want to know about it, you know. They're basically trying to say that it's for you and it's your path, and that's it. You don't need to talk to people about it. It's just for your own way, sort of thing, you know. So, alhamdulillah, they're still accepting me. I respected them before, but even more now, you know, as I realise the importance of it. It's very much more, you know, sort of the next thing to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being good to your parents. So, you know, alhamdulillah, it is. The relationship has improved, you know, definitely. I've got two brothers. One of my brothers is a bit more accepting than the other one. He's interested. Again, they're both they don't really want to... One of them, he likes when I talk about it, you know, but he's still got his own opinions, but he's a lot more open-minded. My other brother, however, is very, very closed-minded about it, you know. He's got trouble dealing with the fact that I, as an Australian, have become a Muslim. He doesn't, you know, he's like, you know, he says, I can't believe you, you know, how can, you know, he's still very, almost bitter towards it, you know, and that's a lot of because of what he's been conditioned to see on the television, but also he's done a bit of travelling in Egypt and some other countries. And as far as he was concerned, you know, he said, oh, you know, I saw things there, people doing this and that and rah rah, you know, and he really has got a very bad opinion of Muslims in general, and from these things that he saw these people doing, you know. And I've tried to explain to him that they may call themselves Muslims, but it doesn't. You got to distinguish Islam from the actions of these people, you know. And but him, unfortunately, he's still very closed-minded. He's not very accepting. For example, when I came back to Melbourne here, he's a concreter. He builds concrete slabs for houses. And I've worked with him before I became a Muslim, and now that I've come back to Perth, he said, come and work with me, you know. And I said, yeah, no worries, I'll come to work. I said, but at lunchtime, I have to pray my prayer, I have to pray Salah, you know, at lunchtime. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, you can do that. But then I say to him, but on Fridays, I have to go to Jummah. I don't care what you say, I have to leave for an hour or an hour and a half on Fridays, and I'll come back to work. And he wouldn't ever bar it. He said, no. He goes, you know, like he just basically said, you know, you can't go. And in reply, I just said, well, look, you know, I'm sorry, I'd like to work with you, but unless I can go to Jummah, I can't work with you, you know. And again, his bitterness, he sits there and he says to me, he goes, you know, I don't understand why you have to go to Jummah, you know. This is an Australian country, it's not a Muslim country, why, you know, you have to have a balance, and you have to, you know, if you're living here, you know, it's not like another country where you can go to Jummah. And I said, well, look, that may be, so I'm living in Australia, but I have to, it's compulsory for me to go to Jummah, so there's no exceptions.